Sarah knew she should look away. The ordering was clear about guarding one's heart, especially against those who had walked away from the faith. But as the dust settled on the lane, revealing the black truck parked where a buggy should be, her breath hitched in her throat. He was back. Samuel Miller had returned, not in plain clothes, but in the attire of an Englisher, wearing the world like a heavy coat. She touched the apron pocket where she kept the dried flour he gave her 5 years ago, a secret that could ruin her standing in the church, yet the only thing that made her heart race. The dawn broke over the rolling hills of Holmes County with a quiet grace that felt like a prayer answered. It was a Tuesday in late October, the kind of morning where the fog clings low to the ground, wrapping the cornstalks in a blanket of gray mist. The air was crisp, smelling of damp earth, dried hay, and the wood smoke that curled lazily from the chimneys of the farmhouse. Inside the Yoder household, the day had begun long before the sun dared to peek over the horizon. The rhythm of the house was steady, predictable, and comforting, like the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Sarah Yoder stood by the kitchen window, her hands deep in the warm, soapy water of the wash-base. At 22, she was the picture of plain grace. Her bonnet was neatly pinned over her dark hair, which was parted severely in the middle and pulled back into a bun that had not seen the light of day since she was a child. Her dress, a deep shade of purple for the weekday, was covered by a black apron, pinned straight and true. She scrubbed the breakfast plates, the clatter of ceramic against the basin, the only sound in the kitchen, save for the crackling of the wood stove. Her mungem sat at the large oak table, peeling potatoes for the noon meal. The skins fell in long, curling ribbons, landing softly in a wooden bowl. "The frost is heavy this morning, Sarah," Mungem said, her voice low and melodic, speaking the Pennsylvania Dutch dialect that was the heartbeat of their home. "Your dad'll need the heavy coat when he goes to the auction barn." Sarah nodded, rinsing a plate and setting it on the drying rack. "I laid it out for him, Mung, and the thick wool socks I finished knitting last week." Life here was a cycle of service. Service to God, service to the family, and service to the land. Sarah found a deep, abiding peace in it. She loved the way the light hit the jars of canned peaches on the shelf, turning them into glowing amber jewels. She loved the sound of the horses blowing air through their noses in the barn, and the smell of leather and oats. It was a good life, a safe life. But lately, in the quiet moments between chores, when the house was silent and the stars were bright above the cornfields, Sarah felt a pulling in her chest, a restlessness she could not name and dared not speak of. Later that morning, Sarah hitched up the buggy to go to the community market. Her dad needed supplies for the fence repair, and Mung needed more flour and sugar for the baking day ahead. The horse, a sturdy bay named Chester, knew the way by heart. The clip-clop of his hooves on the asphalt road was a hypnotic rhythm. As she drove past the swaying fields, Sarah admired the changing leaves russet, gold, and burnt orange. She often wished she could capture them, to draw them on paper, but such frivolous art was discouraged. It was considered prideful to create images of the world God had already made perfect. So, she painted them only in her mind, memorizing the colors. The market was bustling. Buggies were lined up in the designated area, black carriages gleaming dully in the overcast light. Amish men in broad-brimmed straw hats stood in clusters, discussing crop prices and livestock. Women in bonnets moved with purpose, baskets in hand. Sarah tied Chester to the rail and patted his neck, whispering a soft word of praise. She moved through the aisles, selecting a sack of flour and a bag of sugar. She was inspecting a basket of late-season apples when the sound changed the atmosphere. It was the low rumble of an engine. Not a tractor, but a truck. A large, black pickup truck with chrome that flashed even under the cloudy sky. It pulled into the gravel lot, the tires crunching loudly, disrupting the quiet murmurs of the market. Conversations paused. Heads turned slightly, eyes shadowing under the brims of hats. It was common for Englishers, the outsiders, to visit the market, but this felt different. The driver didn't park in the visitor section. He idled near the feed store loading dock. Sarah watched from the corner of her eye, trying to remain modest, trying not to stare. The door opened. A man stepped out. He wore blue jeans, a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and heavy work boots. He had no beard, but his jaw was strong, covered in a light stubble that the Amish men would never wear. He ran a hand through his short, brown hair, looking around with a mix of familiarity and hesitation. Sarah's heart stopped. She dropped the apple she was holding. It rolled across the floor, coming to a stop near the hem of her dress. It was Samuel. Samuel Miller, the boy who had sat 3 benches across from her in the one-room schoolhouse. The boy who had helped her carry her water bucket when it was too heavy. The boy who, 5 years ago, during his Rumspringada running around time, had left for the city and never returned. He had traded the buggy for the truck, the plain coat for the flannel. He was an outsider now, but as his blue eyes scanned the crowd, they locked onto hers. The breath left Sarah's lungs. He didn't smile, and neither did she. But in that frozen moment, the years dissolved, and the ache in her chest that she had tried to pray away came rushing back with the force of a summer storm. The days following Samuel's return were thick with tension, though no one spoke of it directly. In the Amish way, silence was often louder than words. News traveled fast in the community, carried on the wind, and whispered over quilting frames. Samuel Miller was back to sell his parents' farm. His parents had passed on 2 winters ago, and the land had been rented out to neighbors. Now, he was here to settle the estate and leave for good. That was the rumor. Sarah tried to focus on her chores. She scrubbed the floors until her knees ached. She quilted with such ferocity that she pricked her finger 3 times in 1 hour, leaving tiny droplets of red on the white backing. 2 days later, Sarah was in the vegetable garden, pulling the last of the carrots before the ground froze hard. The soil was cold and damp, clinging to her gloves. Her dad was by the barn, struggling with a heavy section of fencing that had come loose during the last windstorm. He was getting older, his movements slower, his breath coming in wheezy gasps. Sarah stood up to go help him, but she stopped. The black truck was coming up the lane. It moved slowly, respectfully, keeping the dust down. It pulled up near the barn. Samuel stepped out. Sarah felt the urge to run into the house, to hide behind the safety of the kitchen walls, but her feet were rooted to the earth. She watched as Samuel approached her father. She couldn't hear their words, but she saw the body language. Her dad stood stiff, arms crossed, a pillar of the old order. Samuel stood with his hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed but deferential. After a moment, her dad nodded, gesturing to the fallen fence. Samuel immediately went to the truck, pulled out a toolbox, and set to work. He was helping. Even though he was English now, he was still a Miller, and Millers were known for their hands. Sarah went back to her carrots, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She worked with her head down, but her ears were tuned to the sounds by the barn, the rhythmic pounding of a hammer, the murmur of voices, "un hour passed." Then, footsteps on the grass. The voice was deeper than she remembered, rougher, like unfinished wood. She stood up, brushing the dirt from her apron. She didn't look him in the eye, that would be too bold, but looked at the button on his chest. "Hello, Samuel," she whispered. "It's been a long time," he said. He didn't move closer, respecting the invisible barrier between them. "You're dead," said I. "Could take a drink from the pump." "The cup is there," she said, gesturing to the tin cup hanging on the post. He drank, the water cool and clear. "You look the same, Sarah. In a good way, peaceful." "And you look different," she said, a sudden bravery taking her tongue. She looked up then, meeting his eyes. They were tired. The blue was clouded with something that looked like exhaustion. "Different isn't always better," A said softly. He looked out over the fields, the vast expanse of gray and brown. "I forgot how quiet it is here. In the city, there is never silence. Even at night, there is a hum. Here, you can hear yourself think." "Is that why you came back?" "To think?" Sarah asked. He chuckled, a dry sound. "I came back to sell the farm. Sarah, you know that. I have a life out there, a job in construction, an apartment, but you were fixing our fence," she pointed out. "Old habits," he shrugged. Then, His voice dropped lower. And maybe I wanted an excuse to see if the girl who used to leave apple dumplings on my porch was still here. Sarah blushed, the heat rising up her neck. That was a long time ago. Samuel, we were children. Were we? He looked at her intently. I still have the drawing. Sarah. The world seemed to tilt. Sarah gasped. You... You kept it! Years ago, before he left, she had drawn a sketch of his horse. It was a rough sketch, done in charcoal on a scrap of brown paper. She had given it to him the day before he left for Rumspringa, a forbidden token. It's in my wallet, he said. It's the only thing I have that feels real sometimes. Sarah, her mother's voice called from the back porch, sharp and warning. The soup is boiling. I must go, Sarah said quickly, turning away. I'll be here tomorrow, Samuel said to her, retreating back. To finish the fence. Sarah ran to the house, her heart a mixture of terror and joy. He had kept the drawing. Eyre remembered it, but he was leaving. He was selling the farm, and she was a baptized member of the church. There was no future here, only pain. The week wore on, and the tension in the Yoder house thickened. Samuel came back the next day, and the day after that. He fixed the fence. Then he repaired the hinges on the barn door. Then he helped Ded stack the firewood for winter. He refused payment. For my parents' sake, he told Ded, her father, a man of few words, accepted the help. But his eyes were wary. He watched Samuel like a hawk watches a fox near the henhouse. On Thursday evening, the bishop came to visit. Bishop Stoltzfus was a large man with a white beard that reached his chest. He sat in the parlor, the kerosene lamp casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. Sarah sat in the corner, sewing a quilt patch, listening. I have seen the Miller boys' truck here often. Amos, the bishop said to her father. His voice was not angry, but heavy with authority. It causes talk. The young ones see it. They see an English heir being welcomed. It confuses them. He is helping with the winter work, Ded said, staring at his hands. He asks for nothing. He asks for attention. The bishop countered. He has turned his back on the ordning. He walks in the world of vanity. We must be careful, Amos. We must not be unequally yoked. Especially ... Quotes. The bishop's eyes flickered toward Sarah in the corner, especially for those of marriageable age. Young Tobias, the weaver's son, has asked me about Sarah. He is a good man, a faithful man. Soon, Ayer. It is for the best. Let him go back to his world. That night, Sarah could not sleep. The wind howled outside, rattling the window. She lit a small candle and pulled a wooden box from under her bed. Inside were her treasures. A blue ribbon from a spelling bee, a smooth river stone, and a letter she had never sent. It was written to Samuel 3 years ago, when she heard he was sick in the city. She had written it, but never mailed it, fearing the sin of attachment to an outsider. She held the letter, reading the words. I pray for you, Samuel. I pray you, find peace. The cows are well, and the apple trees are blooming. I miss the way you made me laugh. Suddenly, the door to her room creaked open. It was Mongame. Sarah tried to hide the letter, but she was too slow. Mongme walked over, her face sorrowful in the candlelight. She sat on the edge of the bed. Is that for him? Mongem asked softly. Sarah nodded, tears stinging her eyes. I never sent it, Mongem. Sarah, her mother sighed, smoothing the quilt. I know you have a soft heart. I know you cared for him, but he has chosen a different path. A path we cannot follow. If you follow him, you leave us. You leave the church. You leave your family. You leave God's covering. Is that what you want? To be out there in the noise and the chaos alone. I don't want to leave you, Sarah whispered. But why does it hurt so much, Mungame? If it is WNA, why does my heart feel like it is breaking? Because the heart is deceitful, Mohem quoted scripture gently. We must trust in the Lord, not our feelings. Feelings are like the clouds, Sarah. they change. Faith is like the mountain. It stands. Mongem took the letter gently from Sarah's hand. "Burn it, child. Let it go. Tobias will be coming for Sunday, singing, 'Prepare your heart for him.'" Mongem left, taking the candle with her. Sarah sat in the dark, the tears flowing freely now. She felt a wall closing in around her. On one side, the warm, safe, suffocating love of her community. On the other side, the cold, unknown, exciting freedom of Samuel. Saturday arrived, cold and bleak. It was the day Samuel was to sign the papers for the farm sale. He came one last time to say goodbye. Sarah was in the barn, milking the morning shift. The smell of warm milk and straw was usually comforting, but today it felt like a cage. She heard the truck door slam. She heard his boots on the gravel. He came into the barn. The light filtered through the cracks in the wood siding, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. He looked different today. He was wearing a black jacket, closer to the plain style, though still with zippers he looked sod. "Sarah," he said. She stood up, wiping her hands on her apron. "You are leaving today." "I am," he said. "The realtor is meeting me at noon. Then I drive back to the city." He stepped closer. "Come with me, Sarah." The words hung in the air, shocking and electric. "Samuel ... She breathed. "I see it in your eyes, Sarah. You aren't happy here. You have a fire in you. You want to draw? You want to see the world. I can give you that. I have a good job. We can get married. You can wear colors. You can be free." "Free?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "To leave my Hmong dead. To never sit at the family table again to be suned. That is not freedom, Samuel. That is abandonment. It's a choice," he pleaded. "I love you, Sarah. I have loved you since we were 6 years old. I tried to forget you in the city. I tried to date English girls. But they aren't you. They don't understand the quiet. They don't understand ... deep things." He reached out and took a hand. His hand was warm, rough, and calloused. For a moment, Sarah let herself imagine it. Sitting in that truck, driving away, seeing the ocean, seeing the mountains, drawing without guilt, loving him openly. But then she looked around the barn. She saw the bucket she used every day. She thought of her dad's wheezing chest and how he needed her. She thought of Mum's sad eyes. She thought of the hymns they sang on Sunday, the voices rising in unison, a harmony that vibrated in her very bones. She pulled her hand away. "I cannot," she whispered. "I cannot break their hearts to please my own." Samuel's face fell. It was a look of utter defeat. "Is that your final answer?" "It is," she said, though every fiber of her being screamed against it. "Go, Samuel. Go back to your world. And find peace." "There is no peace for me there," he said bitterly. "But I will go." He turned and walked out of the barn. Sarah fell to her knees in the straw, burying her face in her hands, sobbing so hard her shoulders shook. She heard the truck start. She heard it drive away, the sound fading, until there was only the wind and the cows chewing their cud. The storm hit that afternoon. It was an early winter blizzard, fierce and sudden. The temperature plummeted, and the snow came down in blinding sheets. The wind howled like a wounded animal. In the Yoder house, they huddled near the stove. Dad was worried. "The sheep," he said. "They are in the lower pasture. If they are not brought in, they will freeze." "It is too dangerous, Amos," Mongame said. "You cannot go out in this." "I must," Dad said, reaching for his coat. But as he stood, he doubled over, coughing violently, his face turning gray. He collapsed into the rocking chair. "I will go," Sarah said, standing up. "I am strong. I know where they are." "No, Sarah," Mongame cried. "I must, Mongame. We cannot lose the flock. It is our livelihood." Sarah grabbed the heavy lantern and wrapped a thick wool scarf around her face. She plunged out into the whiteout. The cold was shocking. It bit through her clothes instantly. The wind pushed against her, trying to knock her down. She fought her way to the lower pasture, the lantern a tiny, useless speck of light in the swirling darkness. She found the sheep huddled by the fence, bleating in distress. She opened the gate and began to herd them toward the barn. But the snow was too deep. One of the lambs was stuck in a drift. Sarah waded in to pull it out. She freed the lamb, but as she turned, she slipped on a patch of ice beneath the snow. She fell hard, twisting her ankle. A sharp pain shot up her leg. She tried to stand, but the leg collapsed under her. "Help!" she screamed, but the wind snatched the word away. She dragged herself toward the fence, clutching the lamb. The cold was seeping into her bones. Her fingers were numb. She felt a strange drowsiness washing over her. "This is how it ends," she thought. "I will sleep here, and the snow will cover me." She closed her eyes, thinking of the warm kitchen, thinking of Samuel. Suddenly, through the roar of the wind, she saw lights, twin beams of light cutting through the snow. A roar of an engine. The black truck. It smashed through the drift near the road. A figure jumped out. Sarah. It was Samuel. He had not left. He had turned back. He waded through the snow, reaching her in seconds. He scooped her up in his arms, as if she weighed nothing. He grabbed the lamb with his other hand. "I've got you!" he yelled over the wind. "I've got you!" He carried her not to the truck, but to the farmhouse. He kicked the door open. Mangim and Dad looked up in shock as Samuel Miller, the Englisher, the outcast, stumbled into their kitchen, covered in snow, carrying their daughter and their lamb. He laid Sarah on the rug by the fire. "She's hurt," he gasped. "Her ankle. And the cold." Mung rushed forward with blankets. Dad stared at Samuel. "You came back," Dad said. "I couldn't leave," Samuel said, shivering. "I got to the highway, and I couldn't go. I turned around. I saw the storm. I knew you might need help." Samuel stayed that night. The storm raged for 2 days. He slept on the rug by the fire. He tended the fire. He helped Dad with the animals in the barn when the wind died down. He carried water for Mongame. He did not look at his phone. He did not talk about the city. Just worked. On the 3rd day, the sun came out. The world was white and brilliant. Sarah sat in the rocking chair, her ankle wrapped. Samuel stood by the door, hat in hand. "The roads are clear," he said. "I should go." Sarah looked at her father. Dad looked at Samuel. He looked at the work boots, the strong hands, the humble posture. He looked at his daughter's face, where the color had returned. "You are good with a stock, Samuel," Dad said slowly. "And my back, it is not what it was. I could use a hired hand. If you are willing, Samuel Fruse, a hired hand. But I am English." "For now," Dad said. "But a man is judged by his fruit. You saved my daughter. You saved my flock. You stayed when you could have run. That is not the fruit of the world. That is the fruit of a good heart." Samuel looked at Sarah. "Sarah, stay," she whispered. "Not for me, but for us. For who you are." Samuel dropped his hat on the bench. Tears stood in his eyes. "I don't want the city," he confessed, his voice breaking. "I don't want the noise. I want this. I want the work. I want the peace. I want to come home." Music swells, acoustic guitar and violin, warm and uplifting. 5 years have passed since the great storm. The farmhouse looks much the same, though a new wing has been added. It is a crisp autumn day, much like the one where the black truck first returned. But the truck is gone. In the barn, there is a new buggy. Sarah sits on the porch, a sketchbook in her lap. She is drawing her son, a toddler chasing a butterfly in the grass. She is still Amish, still plain. But her dad, before he passed, had told her, "God gave you the eyes to see beauty, Sarah." It is no sin to capture it, if you do it with gratitude. The screen door opens. Samuel walks out. He wears the broad-brimmed straw hat and the suspenders of the old order. His beard is grown now, framing a face that has lost its city hardness and found a deep, contented joy. He leans down and kisses Sarah's forehead. "The harvest is good this year," he says. "It is," she smiles, closing the sketchbook. "Everything is good." They watch their son play. They don't need to say anything else. They made their choice. They chose the hard road, the narrow road, but they walked it together, and in the silence of the hills they found a love that was not forbidden, but ordained.